but they have their set of rules, just like vampires and werewolves have their set of rules. But those rules are also safety, because people have read and they're so familiar with zombies that they already know what to expect. You know, you're writing your characters and they're experiencing zombies for the first time, but the reader has experienced zombies a million times. And so how do you make it fresh and interesting for them? Well, everything they're comfortable with, you know, shots to the head, do not kill these zombies. And, you know...
So you wiped out the stereotypes then, John, of
and to try to make it scary again, because armies of zombies are not... cannot be that scary if you have an instant kill. You have this kill shot, it makes you feel safe. So one zombie, it has to be a horde. One zombie is not going to frighten you. In this one, not only are there slow-moving zombies that are stupid, there are fast-moving zombies that are kind of 28 days later, but there are also zombies who can articulate and talk, hold weapons, you know, open doors, and think. I never explain what it is, whether it's a virus, because that's not the point of a zombie novel to me. It was not a point for George Romero, and it works for some people's stories, but not for me. It was more about the zombies themselves. But I wanted to be able to, because I wanted to do fast zombies, but I also wanted to write about slow-moving Romero zombies. And so I found a way to incorporate it all. And I even have one of the characters mention it. I'm kind of talking to the reader, even though she's talking to another character. She says, you know, whatever it is that's causing this, you know, is it a virus? Is it an outbreak? Is it, you know, Al-Qaeda? Whatever it is, it's stupid to think it would affect every single person the exact same way. Viruses and colds don't affect everyone the same way. You get a light cold, you get a heavy cold, it kills some people, it doesn't kill some people. So I have all zombies are represented. There is no kill shot. If you shoot a zombie in the head, you're not killing him. What you're doing, you're tearing up his brain. So you might shoot a zombie in the head and you might render him blind, but he's still going to come at you. Or you might just remove his motor function altogether and he's going to twitch on the floor, but he's not dead. He or she is not dead. And I thought that it would kind of make it scary again. And so, you know, you might see a slow lumbering one, but then all of a sudden, a door could get kicked open and a fast-moving zombie who can talk and think is going to come at you. And for me, it reignited the fear factor of it. Because I spend a lot of the book, I get to the horde of zombies, you know, near the end, but a lot of the book is 2 and 3 zombies. But it makes it scary. You know, when you make them, they're almost invincible. I mean, they can get shredded apart, but they're never going to fall just from you can't just hit them in the head with a hammer and make it die. And so one zombie became terrifying again, which I found interesting when everyone else has to have that army to make it scary. I could do something a little different.
Well, talk about your characters, if you don't mind.
I have 2 main characters, they're friends, and I took the Spielberg track of 2 everymen. He's not nobody's a PI, nobody's an army brat. It's nothing like that. You know, they're not survivalists in the woods who already have their arsenal of weapons. They're regular people doing regular things. And you know, one of the main characters is a Bowden. He's a father. He's a new father, and he's flying back. That's the premise. That's the start of the whole story. He's flying back because his wife went into labor, which is something that happened to me because I did a lot of traveling.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my wife went into labor when I was in Texas. And I had to take that last flight to get home to make it. It was a scheduled C-section, so you know I got to make it in time. I made the last flight out of Texas that night. So that was the catalyst. Was that you know he's in the air when it starts, and because of the nature of the outbreak, I mean it can spread really fast. So by the time he lands, you know Homeland Security's already grounding planes. They're closing airports. That whole level, they're trying to shut everything down. So he lands in the middle of chaos. And his friend's supposed to be coming to the airport to pick him up. So that's how they come together. And they get to experience that initial chaos. So
that's really neat. That's really neat. So, I mean, obviously you had fun writing the novel.
Yes, a lot of fun.
Now, going forward, is this something where you can do a sequel to it or a series? Or is that occurred to you, or are you moving on to a different project?
RJ talked to me about that. I have no interest in continuing those characters because I feel like those characters are developed. They've gone about as far as they're going to go. You know, that might work for some people's stories. Just I don't want to knock that. It doesn't appeal to me. And I know that even with the audience, it doesn't appeal that much because when people do direct sequels, they make less money. That book sells half as many copies. Sorry. You shouldn't. I didn't know what to do. I'm sorry.
That's right.
You know, when it makes half as it sells half as many copies, even though he's an established writer. It's just you have diminishing returns. So if I do return to it, I want to return to the universe and not the characters. Standalone novel, just the same premise, the same types of zombies, the same world, and I may do that. There's no plans yet. I'm going to let this one play out for a while. Mm-hmm. I'm working on ideas to move out of zombies and just other horror or supernatural, crimey kind of stuff.
Well, that was my next question. Obviously, that you don't want to be tagged as just a one type of.
I don't want to just do zombies forever. Yeah. Not that there's anything wrong with zombies, because that's where I'm starting. I mean, that's where I'm getting my break on that. But I would just like to do some other stuff. I can only go to that trough so many times. Mm-hmm. By the time I was done with that, I was sick of End of the World Chaos when I wrote that last page. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to take me a while just to want to go back and do all that again. It's exhausting to build that chaos and that tension. I want to do something different.
Well, what about like ghost stories, John, or
I'm working on not necessarily ghost stories. My next idea that I'm trying to flesh out, it's still just a baby. It's a fetus of an idea. It's not born yet. It's that kind of realistic fantasy kind of stuff. I'm greatly inspired by, like I guess everyone is right now, Joe Hill.
Yeah.
20th Century Ghost was my, his father inspired me to write. He has reinvigorated that with 20th Century Ghost. Mm-hmm. And I guess the biggest compliment I could pay to him is that even with his dad's stuff and other anthologies that I've read, I've never read an anthology cover to cover. You kind of open it up and you look for titles you like and you kind of skip around. I started with the first one and just worked my way all the way to the last one like I was reading a novel. I never even went back to the table of contents. And I've never done that with any other anthology because every one was so engaging and so different. And he kind of has that surreal, supernatural, not necessarily traditional horror style. He writes vast, he spreads out what he's doing. It's not your traditional horror stuff. And so I think that's the track that I want to take with the next novel.
Well, I agree. I just finished reading, I read Heart-Shaped Box and then turned around and read Horns and found them both, like you said, along the same lines, very, very surreal.
Yeah, and Horns more so than Heart-Shaped Box, because Heart-Shaped Box, it's still Joe Hill, but it was a little more traditional, coming off of 20th Century Ghost. Mm-hmm. Horns goes right back to that other type of stuff. There's nothing traditional about it at all, I thought.
Changing subjects a little bit here, movie-wise, are you a big horror movie fan?
Big horror movie fan, of course. I mean, my whole life. My parents were ones that they never, and this is part of what fed not just my desire to be a writer, but my love of horror writing, is that my parents never told me I couldn't watch an R-rated horror movie. I remember watching Nightmare on Elm Street when it was on HBO first run. I don't remember how old I was. I was a little kid, and we all watched it together. I mean, I remember the first VHS tape I recorded it off of HBO was the Heavy Metal cartoon. And
oh yeah, I remember that. That's going back.
I'm like 8 years old or something. I've got, and you're familiar with what it is. It's just they never gave me that restriction, and for good or ill, it lit my imagination, with horror. So I've always loved horror movies. I devoured them as a kid. It was all about horror, all about zombie, the Romero movies, Chainsaw Massacre, Freddy, all that stuff that was the greatest stuff. For one of my birthdays, all my friends, we went to see Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
Oh, the classics.
When that was in the theater. So, I mean, obviously I've had a love of horror for a long time.
I was just wondering, you see the classics and then the remakes come along and it kind of takes the wind right out of your sails with some of it. Is there any remakes that you've seen that you were just like, oh, please, we could have done without that?
Well, I mean, they're good and bad. When you're trying to go from what we consider classics now, or at least icons. Freddy's an icon. I mean, you can look at the first one and the remake. Some people are kind of like, they were immediately pissing all over the remake before they'd even watched it. But I mean, and they're looking back on the old ones. Oh, you're never going to be like the old ones, and Robert Englund, blah blah blah. But you have to remember, even those old ones, they may have had their high points, but they descended into crap. That's why they stopped making them. You had Jason in Space, the old red and blue 3D Freddy movie. I mean, they're not all classics. They were already he was already cannibalizing. New Line was already cannibalizing those characters long before. Platinum Dunes and Michael Bay came along to remake them. They were already destroyed. That's why you had a 10-year break before you saw the remake. So you have to remember that. I'm not going to begrudge any remake. Just be good. And you saw I wasn't automatically groaning when I saw them. They're forgettable. They're not. It just wasn't iconic. And I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street had the most promise of being really good. The remake because they had a lot of stuff going for them. I forget the actor's name from Watchmen who played the new Freddy Krueger, but he was fantastic casting, and I loved the makeup job, that kind of smeared burn look. You got to go somewhere different, and they took away all the funniness and they made him horrifying. The few minutes that he's in there, in the remake, are really good. The movie as a whole is forgettable and stupid and bland, but it's just it's a victim of whatever they were trying to do to it. They're very New Line was very protective of their character for a while, and you can only do certain things with them. And,
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
John, I want to go back to your book a second. For the people who are not familiar with you, where can they get your book?
You can get it on the Kindle. You can get it on Amazon. It's available for order at Barnes and Noble.
Okay.
So just go online and get it. If you're a Kindle reader, you can get it for I think it's $2.99 now.
Okay.
But paperback, this version is out with Amazon and through Barnes & Noble right now, so you can order it from there.
That's wonderful. John, I appreciate you taking time to speak with us at deadberryandback.com. Thank you very much for your
Good
time.
luck with the website.
Oh, absolutely, and I wish you all the best in your future endeavors with your projects, and please be in touch.
I will.
Stay in touch with us.
I will.
All right, thank you, John.
See you next time.